Okay, so I'm going to be going over everything that I've learned in this certification. So 3D Unity. So uh, it basically went over every single aspect of Unity, and I built one, two, I think 5 games. I guess well, one of them is really easy, so it doesn't count, and it was like extremely basic. So I wouldn't even count that one. That was the first one. This one, this one right here is my favorite one, and I have a video running through all of it. So this is easier to go through. So there's multiple levels, and you just have to get this rocket ship to the green pad on every level. And I think I only had 3 levels because it was kind of just repetitive. I didn't feel like doing the same thing over and over again. But this one, honestly, out of everything, I think this one hit the most or the best of the basics, and then the rest just kind of went off of everything used in this game, but more in depth. And this one, I just find to be more fun than the other ones. And I think I go through some of the scripts here. So this is the collision script when you hit an obstacle. I can actually just show you normally right here. Like here's the collision script, and this is all in C sharp. But I would say the biggest takeaway that I got from doing these videos was, or is it my notes? So these actually aren't even all my notes. I have more in Obsidian. So I've been working on moving. Okay, well I gotta open up everything, but there's only a few in Obsidian that I still have to put in here. But I'm working on putting everything in here because this is Notion is web based. But I put pretty much everything that I felt was useful and that I wouldn't remember. So I didn't put basic stuff in here, or I would take stuff out if I have it really drilled in my brain. Like I can't forget it. Like I know how to make like a cube or something. So I'm not gonna put that in here. But I have, like I would say, some important ones would be input. Okay, so here's input, and I just put different ways of getting the input. So I'm not gonna go in depth on it every aspect that I learned, but here's changing scenes. So I learned how to change scenes, uh, a lot of coding, but I'd say that the coding is a lot in all of these games, but it was more working with the inspector and uh I don't know how to put it, but I don't think the coding really was the hardest part. I would say it was um making everything fit together, making all of these, the rocket and the crystal and the cameras, making the camera work, adjusting all the cameras, going into these settings. And then I also have, I think it's an unfinished version of the game after this because I decided to do it again but on a different computer. So, or is it Unity? Yeah, this one. So I think I can open it, but it's not going to be complete and it'll probably take a while. But if I go add, should be desktop right here. Okay. And this game was completely different looking than this one. You're basically just a starship and you fly around and hit enemies that come at you. But I would say this one hit more of the, like again, it wasn't coding really with this one. It was the animations and putting more advanced graphics and models in there. And then the one after that was a tower defense game, and that one I really didn't put much of that into my notes because I didn't feel any of that really would apply to me. So here's an unfinished version. Like, this normally is a spaceship. You don't actually have to add the spaceship graphic. It's just for fun. It has completely the same uh, functionality. Same with this. This is an enemy, but the other one has probably a dozen or 2 dozen of these enemies. And when I click play, actually I don't know if this one works, but I can show you the timeline. Where is it? Here it is. So you'll see the enemy starts moving, and this one stops right here, but you go around this entire map right here. You go around the entire map, and these enemies come out in front of you, and then you can shoot it with these lasers. But then the one after that was a tower defense game, and that was more, I'd say that one was actually also really basic. That was with pathfinding, and again, more enemies. So instead of animating it, that was all in the code, where enemies spawn, and you have to place towers to destroy them. And if they get to the end of the area or the map, then you lose points. That was basically all that one does. And then the last one was a first-person shooter zombie game, which I couldn't do because that one was outdated. And the problem with that one, I'll show you right here. So I sign in. This one was the coolest one by far. Oops. Where is it? Yeah, here it is. So here's what it looked like. It looked like this, and it was your typical first-person shooter game. But then the problem was that the controller was outdated, and it gives you this workaround and these settings to make the workaround work basically for the rest of these videos. But then that workaround is also outdated. And then there's a new one that came out, well, as of this time, would have been a month or 2 ago. So that one is super new. And even these screenshots are outdated. So I would have had to somehow figure out all of this, but then it would have just been a nightmare trying to get that to work with all of these videos, because he's going around in these videos clicking on these settings and whatnot, and I'm just not going to see that. It's just going to be totally different, or I'm just going to run into so many bugs and whatnot. And then there's also a few other outdated little things that you could probably get around, but this would have just been a total nightmare, and it would have been more beneficial for me to just move on. And now I'm working on VR, so it's all of this, but for the VR, which I actually thought would be more similar. It's very similar. It's pretty much the same thing, but it's actually a lot of configuring stuff to work in the VR, and then even then, all of the movement is different. But I definitely built up a ton of notes. Here's terrain. Some of this is coding, and then some of this is working actually with the objects and whatnot. So like this is code, and then there's animations. So here's a good example. Here's animations. I know how to animate totally fine, but I might forget how to set all of this up. You can see it's kind of complicated. So I only put that down because I know how to actually animate. As soon as I have this last step, I can do everything else. Or transform.translate, you just use that so much. I just have this whole thing in here explaining it. sound. There's so many different ways to play sound. I just put the most important ones, the ones that I'm going to use. And then I also have this entire course for a lifetime. So I can always go back and look at this stuff, take stuff out, and put it in my notes. But I would say, or yeah, and then I'm already starting to add some of the VR notes. So that would have been everything that I learned in this VR certification. You can see it hits all of the basics. I mean, it hits everything. It's not just the coding. It's not making just this type of game. Like, this is a totally different game than the tower defense game, which is 2.5D. It's actually not even 3D. And I mean, every game has different aspects, but they all are really built off of this first game, this one right here. That's where I really learned how to do everything. And then I felt like the other games was just building off of this. They obviously don't look the same, but they all have the same mechanics, the same moving, the same putting these obstacles down, changing scenes, everything like that. So that was everything I've learned in my 3D VR certification.